Mark Selby, long time no see. How are you?
In a whole week, I'm doing
not
excellent.
Even.
Thank you.
Not even.
Not even. It's true. It's true.
Oh boy, it's been. But we're here. We're back in the groove for the weekly nickel roundup. See what's happening in the world. So let's start. Did you have you had a good week?
I have actually. Yeah. No. I mean, we Canada Nickel had another big announcement out this week.
Yeah.
Trump's impeached.
Yes.
So. It's all good, and we're entering a new phase of lockdown here in Toronto. So it's another day in COVID world.
I saw the share price got a little bump off the back of the announcement, as it should. That's good.
Yeah.
Would you say nickel miners say no to Trump? Is that what you're saying? You're saying it's good for you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, but again, the key part of that, is the U.S. has been the laggard in terms of the EV story. And so, now, that Biden's clearly going to get behind the EV story. You've got, all of the major markets now, China, U.S., Europe, and the rest of Asia, all focused on electrifying, their transportation network. So, it's massively beneficial, to nickel here going forward. So
is that right, actually? Because you kind of think of, Asia, Europe, EV revolution, but you got Tesla in the States. I know they're global, but they're a US company.
Yeah.
You've got all the kind of big automotive manufacturers in the US. They are tipping their hat towards EV, but would they sort of encouraged or subsidized or otherwise not to kind of make the advances that they should do?
Oh yeah, no, the Democrats are going all in on this. So you're going to see, subsidies. You're going to see a pile of incentives to build capacity in the U.S. to deliver U.S. jobs in this space as well. So as a North American based future North American based nickel supplier, I'm extremely happy, that's the case. I mean, to me, the big question around that though is, mining in a lot of jurisdictions in the U.S. is pretty tough at the best of times, and if you look at some of the struggles a lot of companies have had, even during the Trump administration, which was generally pretty pro resource development, that'll be the interesting thing to see. Sort of, okay, we want EVs, we want local jobs, we want the EV chain here in North America, but with Democrats sort of tipping the balance in a lot of areas, what's that going to mean for permitting and so forth. So it'll be, to me, that's a sort of a big TBD question mark to get sorted out here over the next first. We'll get pretty good signals in the first 6 to 12 months of the Biden administration. So
for sure. I mean, obviously, I think the world saw Trump as kind of very, very pro mining because he was relaxing the rules as to where miners could go and operate. I think the feeling seems to be, we've heard a couple of interviews on this, that the Democrats might tighten up on that and some of federal land, certainly. But can I come back to the politics of it? Because
sure.
How does the politics influence the decision of these large automotive manufacturers? You've got subsidies you've talked about, obviously. It's a big incentive.
Yeah.
Doesn't create a level playing field, but if it's jobs, that's the priority of the government. I guess that's what they're trying to resolve, isn't it?
Oh yeah, again, the U.S. sort of is a bastion of sort of free market capitalism. Has generally been pretty good at subsidizing a bunch of key industries. If you look in terms of defense and aerospace, there's a reason Boeing was the world's largest airplane maker for a long time. So again, when they really want to do something, they find a lot of ways to channel a lot of money into, a lot of different aspects of a particular business. So, that's the part that I think is going to be pretty interesting, in terms of, what kind of, and again, that's the way, all those, people sitting in the Senate and the House, that's the way they get to stay in there, is to make sure their local jurisdiction gets as much of that gravy train as possible. So, it's going to be very interesting to see sort of, with the shift in government and all three houses underneath Democrat control, kind of, what all those sort of ways that they're going to find to get money into, different parts of that chain across the entire United States is going to be interesting.
But again, sorry to bang, we're talking about nickel today, not US politics, but I'm just intrigued because you've kind of got that North American access that I don't. You've got Trump, the Republicans talking the language of job creation, and they've talked, with coal, with steel, and all those sorts of well-established industries. And you've got the Democrats talking the same language. I mean, so what's so different about the approach? Is it the acceptance of the Green New Deal, or the Big Green New Deal, I think it was called, or because Trump had like 4 years to kind of do something, and he didn't. For the green economy, for EV, etc. Is your statement based on hope? Is it based on reality of what Democrats have actually said that they're going to do, or do we just not know at the moment?
No, I think it's what they've said in terms of the Green New Deal. I think B, the fact that they now control all three houses, and a Republican Senate would have used that as a way to sort of slow down any changes that Mr. McConnell didn't agree with. And then third thing, and again, you always have to remember with U.S. politics, as we're all way too familiar with the Electoral College, but it's the Electoral College that actually really matters. And it comes down to half a dozen states, and a good chunk of those key states have a lot of auto production and auto parts production in them. So, if you want to convert every auto plant and build a bunch of new auto plants to make green cars or parts of green cars, that's a great way to help get you reelected in 4 years in those swing states. So,
yeah, I can say that. But Trump did do a bit. I mean, he did say to us that the U.S. automotive guys, you bring your production back from Mexico, you bring it back from Brazil, and you do it here. But which was a good signal. But did he just not have enough time to see that through? Are we being unfair on him?
He's was very focused on the show and not the it's the clip. Whether you go back and actually measure whether that happened or not, that's just that's data. Who needs the data? I've got the 45-second soundbite on YouTube that shows me talking. That I've made all these automakers bring their car plants back from Mexico. So
okay, more investigation needed. Maybe I'll get one of the guys to write a story up on it. Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, and the key piece is again for the automakers. Because with the U.S. not there, and it's such a it's a big market. You kind of have to say, okay, we're going to advance on both fronts. But now with the U.S. in the next 12 months really sort of joining the whole EV party, then again as a car maker, you're going to feel more confident to say, okay, by 2030 we're going to stop selling internal combustion engines, or by 2035, or by some of them some of the more European focused car makers already have those kind of statements. But, again, I think, in the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to see sort of more of those kind of, whether it's 2040, 2035, you're going to see more of that. Because, again, with the U.S. now joining the party, it sort of takes away that risk that, okay, well, still half my production has to be internal combustion engines, because I can't sell them I can't sell EVs in the U.S.
Right.
So,
and we'll be back with the Paris Climate Agreement in no time, will we?
That's coming. And as a potential zero carbon producer of nickel, cobalt, and iron, I will welcome more carbon pricing globally in the world, which will just create a premium for low carbon products like cars hope to be.
There we go. Okay. Well, look, we're here to talk about nickel, not my very poor knowledge of the US politics. So, we were meant to talk about 3 hours ago, right? And I had to delay because my day is just mental. And in that time, I'm kind of glad we did, the price of nickel went up.
Yes.
So why don't you give us that?
You obviously knew.
I knew. It was me.
You obviously knew that was coming, and took a small portion of your net worth to push the nickel price, through a multi-year high. So. Yeah, no, we've been trading in a range for the last week, and that was my note at 4 hours ago. But today it's basically up against and pushing through the high that we hit back in about 2 years ago, and we're now prices are high as they've been since 2014-15. So we're now at multi-year levels, and again, this early in the year, I did not call that, but I think it's very encouraging. Very, very encouraging sign for the year. As we talked about, a couple of weeks ago, there's been a big macro shift in terms of funds flowing into commodities in general. But, again, this was a move that nickel made today that you haven't seen across the other base metals. So, it's pretty intriguing. And we're getting some interesting signs out of China in terms of, what's continuing to happen there.
Well, we're coming up for a Chinese New Year, right? So that's always a kind of moment. You've talked about that in the past as well. So what are you expecting to see? What are the implications?
Well, what's interesting is I think we're starting to see a bifurcation and a temporary bifurcation. I'll get back to that in a little bit, between the battery sector and the stainless steel sector. So, what's interesting heading into Chinese New Year, again, people get nervous going down into, again, they make calls, prior to the end of year things. And what's happened in the battery market is, they're seeing the uptake in the EV sector globally. They had been squeezing for a while, and now the market's bounced back pretty quickly. And what's happened is you had a real restocking happen because people don't want to get caught short on the other side of Chinese New Year if demand continues to grow, the kind of way they're expecting. So we're seeing the whole chain, really move higher. So briquettes, which are the key product for making sulphate, and the reason why, I don't think I've ever talked about this before, is they're basically compressed powder. So as soon as you dissolve them, they dissolve very quickly. Stainless steel mills don't like them because they're compressed powder, and so as soon as they heat up a little bit, poof, you get a whole pile of dust that ends up in your dust collection system.
I used to do that with iron ore. We invested in a company that did iron ore pellets. And you have to have a binding agent, which this is really weird. Traditionally, it had things like cement as part of the binding agent, molasses as part of the binding agent. Okay, you see, it's like someone let some kids loose with some science project, said, now how do we get these briquettes to stick? But the trouble was, all of the stuff that was binding it was left as residue at the bottom of these kilns, which every 12 months needed cleaning out. So you'd have to shut everything down, clean it out, and then get it back up and running again. So the downtime was horrific. But so, we were looking at ways of reducing the amount of crap in these briquettes as you were doing. Is that a similar sort of issue, or does it dissolve quite easily?
Oh yeah, for sure. It just ends up as a pile of dust that needs to get handled, as opposed to ending up in the steel. Yeah, stainless steel where it's supposed to be. But what's really fascinating is that whole sulphate briquette chain. So briquette premiums are up. Sulphate production was up massively versus a year ago, and up 6% month over month. Nickel in sulphate was at 17,000 tons, about 200,000 tons annually. So again, it's now starting to get to the point where when you're growing at 40 or 50% a year, it's going to really have start to have an impact on the overall market, which was just too small before. And then, sulphate itself is trading at $1,500 a ton premiums to pure metal.
Wow.
So that's one side. Yeah, that's one side of the bifurcation. On the other side, and we've talked about this a lot in terms of the triangle, is Chinese NPI production was down sharply in December as expected. It's the lowest level that it's been since mid 2018, and again, we're expected to drop by another third during the year. And the reason why is you've got this great big surge in Indonesian production. It's cheaper than the Chinese production, and it's going to force its way into the market. And the way we're seeing that in the market is, whereas briquettes and sulfates trading at a premium, you're seeing NPI swing out to very large discounts relative to pure nickel. And that's what's causing Chinese production to basically shut down, because you can't make any money in that process. So, but what's happened with NPI at a discount, sulfate back up at a premium, this big gap is opening up again. And 2 or 3 years ago, when sulfate batteries started to first take off, sulfate premiums were up to like $2,500 a ton. And this is where this whole class 1 versus class 2 discussion, really sort of, that's where it was birthed. And so, again, in a few weeks here, you're going to start people sort of banging the table. This is, it's forever. This will be a temporary adjustment. I've talked in the past that in a few years, the Chinese will start to build conversion capacity to take, nickel sources that are currently used to make nickel pig iron and use them to start making batteries, because that path is not particularly expensive. It's far less expensive than a lot of people are talking about. And so, what you'll see these premiums stay wide for most of this year because there's another big surge of NPI coming from Indonesia. But once we absorb that in the market, the Chinese production that can shut down will shut down. The discount's going to start to narrow, and then you're going to see as sulfate production ramps up, you're going to start to see that premium come down. But the big winner here, from an investor perspective, for the first time in the history of the nickel business, we're going to start to see some real alternatives for miners, to have, to be able to sell their products rather than the six typical smelter refiners, traders, who do a pretty good job of squeezing out a big chunk of the value for themselves and not leaving nearly as much for the miners. So, I'm very excited by this development. I think the shift will happen now in the next 12 to 24 months. And it will, again, this gap will be temporary, and the Chinese will, will build the capacity to make that gap disappear, on a go-forward basis.
Because, bifurcated markets by nature complicate things, because you're never quite sure where the real floor is and how long it will. Well, certainly with temporary bifurcation, you're not quite sure how long it will last, and even depends what temporary means. I guess over what period of time we're talking about. But bifurcated markets don't tend to do well over time. But the upside here is, and just to explain, if you will, or break it down for me, but you're talking about an increased capacity, which is great because it means that there's a bit more pricing elasticity there. There's no individuals or a handful of individuals in control of your destiny as a company. So how much more capacity we're talking about, and what precisely is the problem that Chinese are trying to resolve?
Yeah, so the example I always use is if you go back to the cobalt market in the mid 2000s, again, it was very clear that the world was not producing anywhere near enough of sort of finished cobalt products. And so the Chinese went, oh, well, we need more cobalt in various forms. So they just, went to the Congo and people could get kids to put literally bags, dig bags of ore out of the ground and ship those bags of ore to China. And the Chinese built, a huge amount of processing capacity to take that material and then make a wide, whatever cobalt product the market needed, cobalt sulfate, cobalt chloride, cobalt, they did pretty much, every product that you could imagine. And they went from 3% of the cobalt market in terms of refined output in China to 30% in 3 years to 50% in 5 years.
Amazing. I
don't think that's going to be the case here. But that's the kind of quantum of capacity that can come to the market. And all those people who are involved in the cobalt chain, have the metallurgical know-how to do a similar thing in the nickel chain. And it's important to know, and this is the frustrating part, for me, people talk about these permanent nickel sulfate premiums. They're going to be so huge. Cobalt salts trade at a discount to cobalt metal. And again, it's just the function of, the path from a raw material through a upgrading process to a salt is cheaper than a metal. And the Chinese build the capacity so that you find out exactly what that looks like. And over the next 18 to 24 months, 12 to 24 months, we will find that out with the Chinese in terms of other nickel intermediates, sulfate, nickel hydroxide, that's another chemical that people need, to make batteries. So, all that capacity is coming, and they'll build way more than the market needs, and that's good for the feed producers.
Is it good? I want to understand why it's good. Okay, because again, we've looked at this scenario within rare earths, for instance, right? So all
Yep.
the knowledge, all the expertise, all the money, all the facilities for extraction, for processing, for rare earths resides in China, right? There's 90% of the capacity in the world. The rest of the world has bits and pieces of the solution, but not all joined up. So at some point, those bits and pieces need to link back into the Chinese ecosystem, which then allows them to control the pricing again, right? So what's going to happen with nickel when it's reliant on China? When when the Chinese perhaps go, do you know what? We need that. We need all of this. I mean, maybe you don't care. Maybe it's like, well, if you pay me the right price, I'm good. But if they control the capacity, isn't that a problem?
Again, from a mining perspective, again, the Chinese bid the price of any feed up to the point where the average Chinese producer of that tends to make no money, and all of the benefit gets passed on to the producer. So as a future producer of a feed, I am very happy with that outcome. In terms of the broader market, again, Elon Musk's goal, which, I can completely agree with, his thing is, and their whole battery day presentation was really around, we need to push the price of the battery pack down to a point where everybody can afford to buy an EV. That premium you need to pay to get an EV, disappears over time. And so they were looking at doing a bunch of things. So it's helpful for the overall market that will bring the cost of delivering the batteries we need down. Where I think, what I think is different, in this market versus some of the others is that, part of the reason the Chinese can build, they had a pile of rare earth capacity to get started with. So they had the feed and then they had the processing capacity. So it's like, well, I don't need your feed and I definitely don't need your finished product. So we'll just do it all here. The difference here is that, you're going to have major consumers of nickel who will not want to be solely dependent on China for their source of, for their, a key part of their supply chain. So again, that's the opportunity for producers like us, who have a large enough resource that, a battery producer, could conceivably look at building a plant, right next door to, our operation, or somewhere between our operation and Tesla's plants or Ford's plants or GM's plants, or whoever else is going to be building EVs in the United States. So, and Europe. So, and again, they'll have to pay us, close to what the Chinese would pay them. So, to be able to sort of to get our feed. So. So it's ultimately a big win for us. That's why I'm excited to see the great conversion begin.
The great conversion sounds like a sort of horrific sort of 14th century disease in Middle England. The great conversion.
It's a 7-part miniseries on PBS.
Oh yeah, that's the other one. A money spinner. Let's do it. Let's write it. You talked about a couple of years. You think this is really sort of temporary, being a couple of years before capacity can come on, because these things take time to build, etc. But when does because looking at you guys, when you talk about getting production, 25, right? 2025.
Yeah, right. It'll be middle part of this decade.
So really good for you. My thinking is, well, that's great for you. So if I'm an investor in your company, I'm good, golden, you're great, right? But is it good for the American ecosystem or North American ecosystem to have that reliance? Where's the competitive tension going to come from in North America if they don't start investing? Because that's the hard bit.
Well, no, that's the thing is if they don't start investing, I think again, out of Tesla's battery day, you saw, Piedmont Lithium, that's now going full bore ahead, and, Tesla is going to make that as a primary supplier. They've got their own science experiments going on in terms of, shaking some table salt on some, clay from Nevada and turning that into lithium.
Always a winner.
So they are starting to make those investments. I think, it will take a little bit of time, but they will get there and realize they will need to do that if they want the metal unit.
That's those guys, right? But the guys we talked about at the beginning, the top of the show, which was the American automotive industry, which has been lagging, right? So they're they're outsourcing everything all around the world. Maybe they're going to be told by the Democrats to bring everything home, but they're going to have to start making these investments too to be control of their own supply chain in the way that Tesla's recognized. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I think again, just as sort of a couple examples. So in Canada, Ford just announced that they're going to move an EV platform, start an EV platform, at one of the Canadian automotive plants, with a little $250 million worth of help from multiple levels of government here in Canada. To that effect, and it was great news. First Cobalt got $10 million, effectively of grant or forgivable loans from the provincial and federal government to help that happen. And so, again, I know that the North American car makers have been thinking about it. Now that they're actually going to start to, and again, this is with Biden getting in, and they know they're going to be selling even more cars, into the U.S. Then they're going to start retooling their plants, and as soon as they start retooling their local plants, they're going to start thinking about the local supply chain. So, it's not there; it will come, and again, like anything, once one of the big automakers do it, the rest of them will do it, and it'll be this massive surge that comes out of nowhere. So
yeah, essentially, we
just need to make sure we're positioned for it.
Yeah, I think we've got Trent on next week. Trent Mal, CEO of First Cobalt, next week. He's a good guy. I think they've also just done a deal with Glencore as well. As have you. It seems very topical at the moment. Did you just get a bulk deal on that one? Is that the way it works?
Was that two for one deal? Yeah.
2 for 1?
No, not quite. Hey.
Gotta ask. Right. Okay. So there's a lot as usual going on, and you kind of covered some of the macro things. And I think just in terms of time, I'm just kind of conscious of time. Should we talk about some of the things which are some of the other things which are going on out there? For instance, ASX companies making a lot of announcements.
Yeah, so we had a handful of drilling results from the various companies that we've talked about in the past. I think Talon had a great hit there, 8% nickel, over 8 meters. Nice. So again, that's a nice chunky intercept, and they're working through with geophysics, trying to figure out where the better parts of the big potential that they have there. So again, that was great to see, and we need more nickel sulfide production. The ASX, I'm going to not name any specifics, but the thing, remember from some of our earlier shows in terms of the tools, when you see a drill intersection, look at, okay, is it a step out from where they were before? How much of a step out it was? Generally, the bigger the step out, the more confident they are that of the scale of what they've got. Or is it infill? Okay, we're taking 2 holes and we're already pretty close together, and we're drilling another hole right between them. That is a lot less valuable than a meaningful step out. So yeah. So that's the key thing as people sort through the announcements from the various companies that we talked about before. Just sort of have that filter in your mind as you're looking at some of the results. I
think that's right. We have talked about the companies that we're talking about here before, but let's not mention them now. I think it'll be indiscreet. But the point is, there are step outs and there are step outs. So it shows the degree of confidence about what they've got. If they are doing a half-meter step out, 1 meter step out, it says they're not quite sure what's going on, but they need some news in the market, and it better be a good headline. Because that kind of works. It kind of works for the market. People can't be bothered reading the art. They read the headline and go, there we go. If you're stepping at 400 meters, 800 meters, you're there. It says this company wants to know more. They're confident in what they've got, but they want to know more, right? So this quite actually, it's a good thing. I know we've talked about it before. I just think it's really important that people pay attention to that bit. It's not just the grade and over how many meters. It's about where. Good point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we saw that. I also know some Blackstone Minerals. We talked about them in the past. They are going hammer and tongs. Was it hammer and nail. What's the phrase? There's a cliche there somewhere. They're going at it. Hammer and nail. That's a new one. I think they've got something like 9 rigs lined up. They are really going for it. I think they're under a bit of pressure from their partner.
No, it's good. I mean, they've got, again, a Koreans there. I mean, they're a battery producer. They want material, and they're one of the companies that out there that are really thinking about, how they get their nickel supply in their future. And again, to me, that was always a great transaction because, Vietnam had a 25% export duty on concentrates. They wanted you to process it in country, and that deposit was never big enough to have sort of a more typical traditional processing facility built. But, Korean partner can basically, build it, and you can, again, take it from concentrate, and one set of steps come out with something, that a battery maker can use. So, to me, that's an example of what's going to happen in the future. That's, the kind of thing that I think we'll see, with Canada Nickel. So, again, we need everybody, all the nickel projects need to get developed to have any hope of getting all the metal.
Yeah, that was. I think they're doing that with EcoPro, isn't it? Because I think we were talking with Blackstone about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago. They're coming on again soon. But what's interests me is the way that these companies, like EcoPro, it happens to be quite a big one, but there are lots of people now having sort of nailed down some of the more important deals, like the nickel deals. They're now looking for other things, like the cobalt, like the graphite, like some of the big deals, like the lithium deals, and they're having to remember to get all the other bits nailed down too. And there are a lot of conversations that we're aware of, of groups like that are trying to nail companies down, but it's got to be conditional. You've got to know what you're walking into. Where you say, right, okay, you tell me you've got X. Now you need to show me. So there's got to be some conditions attached to it. So that takes a little bit longer to do. Yeah,
but again, that's one of the reasons we're being so keen in terms of aggressively advancing the project, because again, you need to be able to talk to them about what your project's really going to look like. To be for them to engage. So again, they're comfortable, and if you again look at this, the kind of deals, Tesla, other car makers have done deals with Glencore for multi-year, multi-tonnage cobalt offtakes and other offtakes and so forth. But they're working their way down the food chain. Again, the EcoPro is an example of something that I think you'll see more of in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years here. And is kind of a model for the future. But the rest of the industry is trying to sort of get comfortable with that, and they will. Because again, at the end of the day, Glencore Vales of the world only have so much nickel. They have other customers that they need to sell nickel to. So there's really only so much available for long-term contracting, and so they'll realize, okay, if I want some nickel by 2025 or 2027 or 2030, I really better think about lining that up sooner than later. So
I tell you what I've not seen, and you see it in a lot of other commodities, is when prices go on a tear, like nickel's done, right? You usually see companies trying to get themselves, inserted into the, well, in this case, the nickel arena. With uranium, we've seen it. Lots of people going, oh, correct, uranium's going off on one. I'm going to get myself a uranium asset. They've done the same with lithium. Don't know what they're doing. Well, those two are quite bizarre because they're very technical. They're very technical. Gold I can understand, or we've talked and had a laugh about in the past, where they start off with one name tag. What should we call it?
Right.
Company gold changes.
It's the front of the bus, right?
Yeah.
Just change the. Yeah. It's this root gold, rare earths, whatever.
Whatever's hot. I am an absolute slut, and you can call me anything. But we're not. Haven't seen as much of that in nickel. Is it happening?
Oh, Matthew.
Really?
So 2 things. One is the reason you have is it really sort of that point underscores the sort of lack of exploration and development that's been done in the nickel space. So there haven't been too many things that, people did some drilling on, so that you can, as a, person who goes back and says flavor of the month, they drilled this hole, in 2005, and I'll drill I'll twin a hole and I'll get another one. So that's one dimension of it. No, but two, it is coming. I have been floated stuff that's, at least I'd say 5 or 6. 1 or 2 are okay, but 3 or 4 are, pretty, that's a really worked over, property. Right. And
how old are these? Yeah, when's the last drilling?
Again, most of the stuff that you're going to see coming to market soon would have been drilled in 2006-7. It was probably drilled in the, around Boise's Bay before that. And then most product on the shelf was initially drilled off back in the 60s, when we had a big nickel boom. And that was sort of the last sort of global period of sustained nickel exploration. So there's a lot of stuff that's been around for 50 years that's, been
right. So the dusting it off,
recycled,
whipping it out.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's the next question then. If two or three are okay, what does okay mean to you?
Okay means that, whatever, that there is some exploration potential left, that what's there hasn't been drilled, or it was drilled at a point in time where the technology, wasn't necessarily in place. So things like downhole EM now is much better at lighting. We can look much deeper and much further away from a hole to see things. So if something was drilled in the 80s and people forgot about it, it didn't get touched in the 05 cycle, that's something that's okay. Yep. No, that could hang together. The other part would be things kind of like, again, large low grade deposits. Maybe somebody had a hole, and our project Inco did 1 or 2 holes and everything in the mid 60s. And it was that, they weren't interesting grades for 1964. So no one really spent any time with them. So again, if there's a new development model that works for something that was drilled at that time, that those are the good ones. The other ones that, if they've been picked through 3 or 4 times, and they were, I don't think there's been some advances since 05-07, but I wouldn't say, that they're transformative, that, if you didn't find it in 2006 or 7, not sure you're really going to find something of any size,
right.
14 years later.
So, I hear this one a lot with the old interviews that I do. It's like the old, well, we're going to use modern techniques. That's
modern geophysical techniques.
Yeah, it's going to change the economics like that. Sit back and count your money. All right. So, but nickel, you're saying it's a little bit simpler than that. The way that you appraise these. I mean, the information that comes in, are these data rooms, or are these just ideas? I mean, how do people approach you about these things? What are they expecting from you?
Oh no, people are starting to raise money. So people are sending things past me. What do you think? Does this look okay? A lot of these companies are private now, so you got to get everybody in on the the half-cent seed round before you then take it to market and raise money. From unsuspecting retail shareholders at 10 cents a share. So.
Jeez. See, I that's for me. We've got like 4 analysts here, and like I know nothing. Got some clever people, and the amount of stuff that we get said. Could you just run your eye over this? It's like, run my eye over this. There's no running my eye over this. It's like, what do you want to look at a PowerPoint and go, nah? But they want you to look at a data room and go, well, that's 10 grand's worth of time to do. Okay, don't get me wrong. Let me say, of the 300 deals I look at each year, I can probably look at give me an hour and I can go 90% of them, pile of shit. Forget it. But if it's got legs, it takes so much longer, right? It just takes so much longer. And by the way, 90% is not far off the actual number of rejections. you know. But the 10%, you kind of got to whittle that 10% down to 2% to actually then work out if you spend your time on it, and then you got to go, well, it's hard work, but there's a lot of freeloading out there. That's what I'm saying, Mark. Not that I am complaining. I'm whining about it right now to you. Too much. So you say, are people coming at you to say, hey, has this got legs? I'm raising some money. Or are they saying, hey, do you want to come on board with this? Or have you got enough on your plate?
Both. Yeah, in both. Yeah, but I've got lots on my plate, so I'm not, just between Crawford and the option properties and other stuff in the Timmins area, we've got lots of opportunities.
Hey, well, I'm going to take this opportunity only because I was asked before I came on, which is around drill results. When are they out? When are you coming? When are you going to talk about that? Next set of drill results?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I think we should talk early next week and have a good catch up in terms of, we had the one big step out today in terms of the West.
Right.
So, one of the best 8 holes we've had drilled to date, 300 meters at 0.3% nickel. So that higher grade core, which again is the key part of the value, is extended. It looks like it extends another 40% up to the northwest, so that's good. The PGM hits, we're finally going to get, again, the assays have finally started flowing. So we've got quite a backlog to get through. So we should see some answers on that in the next few weeks here.
Okay. Cool.
And then the Met results, we're going to again see some pretty steady news flow on that over the next few months here as well.
So the big one, given what happened with Glencore, the announcement for the MOU, the agreement to agree about that, I think that's gone down really, really well, is feeding that into your numbers and trying to get the PEA to a point where you go, okay, we now understand what's going on there. So is there what are you thinking?
In terms of the PEA is going to come out the end of the first quarter. So
beautiful.
Again, it's understanding technically what's there, but then also negotiating terms.
Well, exactly. What I meant was that Glencore is the long pole in the tent because you started a process which could dramatically improve. It could dramatically better the current economics, which are still good. They're good. But that's the long pole in the tent you've got, because the MOU is an agreement to agree, so you've still got to do the negotiation, but broadly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the good part here is, again, at the end of the day, I don't need them. We've got a great big project that holds its own.
Yeah.
It's just materially better if we get started at a small scale first,
exactly.
And vice versa, in terms of the kid site. So,
it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait.
You sit down with some commercial people, you can come to a good deal that makes sense for both.
Yeah, no. So it wasn't a conversation around timing of PA. I think it's totally right to wait for this because I think that it could be material benefit to you guys for sure. Well, that was it. There you go. People are always asking, so
all right,
you're hot off the press. Well, Mark, we better call it a day there because I've got someone coming in with 3 minutes time.
Okay.
They got me working.
So yes, strap your, the breaking through this nickel level, again, once you get through a level that you haven't been to for a while, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And again, sort of going down as the market slows down, that's when people want to give things a little bit of a shove. So, heading into Chinese New Year, again, I thought the overhang of nickel pig iron sort of, would sort of weigh the market down a little bit here, but it looks like the strength on the battery side is carrying the day. So,
apparently, in the European ecosystem, I think the numbers that they're talking about. They reckon the numbers that they were aiming for 2020-25, they'll hit by end of 2022. Okay, they're going to need way more. You've got someone phoning you, probably Donald. I've got to go. Speak to you soon. Have a good one.
Okay.
Cheers, buddy.
All right. Thanks, man. Take care. Bye.